over and over, right? And that's okay. However, there's a problem right now, I would say, or a challenge with Webpack runs currently, to where in the middle, there's no way to say, what is it doing, right? So
Yeah.
I would say that's the primary object. Like everything I described is really towards that. Like I want to be able to say, right now it's in the middle of, building all the modules. So, it gives you an expectation of what to look for.
Okay. And so how this will be different from the Progress plugin, for example,
Oh yeah.
except from the buffering stuff.
Right. So and actually, I'm glad you brought that up. The Progress plugin kind of inspired some of these ideas because it does not. So the Progress plugin is okay for local development because it uses the buffer output. In other words, the read line interface, I believe it uses to update, partial output. And it's just throwaway, but it's not sequential. You can't go back to it and read it and say what happened, and also in CI environments, it tends to not play nice because it, for many reasons I won't go into yet. However, it should be CI first is the goal. Progress plugin does a certain thing in a certain way that is helpful for very few things, right? So I want to change that.
Okay, so the idea is to make the current output also giving an idea of what happens during the compilation, and also give the possibility to override what Webpack is printing in the console.
Yes. So I would, high level, I view this as a Webpack plugin, kind of like Progress plugin, except it exposes a way to indicate how loud each hook is going to be in the report. So for example, building modules is much more frequent than compilation run, right? In fact, maybe thousands of times more. Okay. So if you were to print that 1,000 times, I would argue that that's probably not useful, right? It's not helpful. So, but what would be helpful is if you maybe printed those hooks in 200 increments. That way I have an idea of where it's at, right? So it's a stagger.
Okay. So for loud, do you mean how many times, for example, for second, it is allowed to print? Can you repeat, please?
Limiting the output of each, log.
Okay. And also, differently from the Progress plugin, it should provide data formatted in, for example, JSON standard output.
Right.
I mean, the example, okay. So it's easy to take that and print it as you prefer.
Exactly. And maybe you don't want JSON. Maybe you like your own custom formatter, right? That's okay too. And this should just facilitate, the whole goal of this is like, let's say your Webpack compilation dies in the middle somewhere, this should be able to provide a diagnostic as well, because you could see, oh, in the middle of building modules, it, had a fatal error on one of the loaders, chronologically, that's helpful because you can actually very clearly see, at least a ballpark of where the problem occurred.
Okay. And so from the conversation we had on Slack, my first impression was to have, for example, I don't know if it's a waterfall hook, the one that executes all the plugin in passing the output of one plugin to the next one. But the idea I had from the conversation was that this plugin, Webpack, could understand if our plugin for reporting was overriding the output, and if it's not overriding the output, prints the normal output, the default one. I don't know how I explain it.
Yeah, I think I follow. If
Okay.
there's other plugins that are, you can't really stop another plugin from using console log,
Yeah.
but you can, our best advice I would say is don't use other competing log plugins.
Okay, so but this plugin, the output plugin, for example, will be responsible of printing, for example, stats. And if it prints stats, Webpack shouldn't print stats, the default stats. I've seen that Ivan has joined. Hi, Ivan.
Hi, I'm just listening because I have to get in context first.
Okay. We was talking about the output reporter, and my question was about the current default output that could be overridden by an output reporter plugin.
Yeah, I think you should do that because even though that we are like this might change for both sides. So we're currently working on the next version of Webpack CLI, which will have kind of like a different outputs, but still you would need to change the visuals, the way you print
Yeah.
to the CLI in Webpack. Yeah, that's right. In my opinion, I don't know if Steven or someone else has different opinions about that, but
Okay, and also Steven told me that the idea is to have something that's similar to the Progress plugin, but a little bit different with some standard
So no
data
buffer
format.
output.
Okay.
So yeah, so basically what we were talking about, Evan, is a way to distinguish between what belongs in stats, Webpack stats, and what belongs as like live reporting.
yeah, between that and
Yeah, so I think I imagine we'll need to probably confirm some of these with Sokra because I know he has strong opinions on things that belong in stats.
yeah, but he still thinks it's going to need some improvement. So maybe we should like involve in a phone discussion forum. But in the first place, to go back to the argument against something like Progress plugin, I think that would be like real good. So I was at the talk yesterday, and the Nuxt CLI, or I think it's either it's the Nuxt or the Vue CLI, they have overridden Progress plugin, so it looks better. I think maybe that would be in the scope of output reporting.
Oh yeah, and I think I showed you once, Evan. Like I think I wrote one for one of my old jobs, and I pasted it to you, like what I was doing to explain. Do you recall that?
No.
Well, basically, it's the ability to get an idea in the middle of a Webpack, crashing, for example. In our CI, we had an issue where if something happened, we really don't know where or when. We'd have to rerun it locally and reproduce, etc. And that became like a big problem, all because of that loader or the output, so.
Oh yeah, right. So you would stop at a specific percentage and print the current error,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, gotcha.
I think that's it for Output Reporter for now. I wasn't sure what we were trying to cover in this meeting, so I'll leave it to you, Evan.
All right. Isn't Ferret here?
I'm here.
All right. I thought we had
if
you had a tentative plan in the Slack channel.
yeah, I mean,
So,
I have some kind of agenda as usual, but I mean, I just come up based on the chat on this agenda, and I'm always asking like if someone has something maybe urgent. But I mean, for me, the next topic is always the Webpack UI or this Webpack CLI UI, because was it last week, last week that we got this new design, and I just wanted to also, for example, talk to Rishabh how he sees that regarding implementation, how his current status, for example.
all right. So a word on Webpack UI. We have the designs, but we still have to scope the technical part of how it's going to be implemented. So that should be in its own. I think we already have a discussion for it, and the guy who wrote the designs also had some comments about the workflow or the user flow of the UI designs he made. So I think before we actually start implementing, we should get the user flow straight, connect those designs into something like an arrowed scheme of how it's supposed to work, in my opinion.
Currently the designs that are available are made with respect to web, not the local respect. So we need to change that, and also the user flow. And as far as this implementation is concerned, I have an PR on refactoring AHT utils, where I have tried a new approach that I discussed with you earlier. So you can see I have implemented that part.
All right, yeah. So do you have some like links that I can have a look at?
You can check the PRs on Webpack CLI.
All right, so it's the same PRs that we had previously.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, like besides doing the actual planning work, after we like figure out technically how this is supposed to work, we have a full overview of how it's going to be implemented. I think we should implement it, but we need to keep in mind that this is something that we do not want to maintain a lot. So I think the best thing to do with Webpack UI would be to, and I've discussed this with Steven, put it in our own repository, which we can actually like say to the user, okay, hello, you want to install Webpack UI from something like Webpack contrib or similar. So this would mean that we have less to maintain as core contributors. And also it means that we shouldn't have a lot of code covering Webpack UI because we just want a skeleton. So the optimal base case here would be to have just the CSS and have a minimal amount of actual HTML code to maintain, because that would be a lot to maintain for people.
Exactly. I agree. So the goal of this is realizing that Webpack has so many resources available to keep up compatibility for things it supports. So the UI is actually, I think it's a great idea. I think it's really cool, but it's also big enough to maybe even outweigh a lot of other current Webpack efforts, right? So the goal here would be to where if something falls out of compatibility for Webpack UI, it's not putting a strain in the rest of the Webpack org to stop everything and fix Webpack UI. So this should be probably a more relaxed response workflow to compatibility, I would say.
That seems fine. I have a repository for a new example. I can basically extend that. This would be fine.
I mean, is that idea then basically, I don't know, that like Evan said, we have some core code, which is basically getting, I don't know, all the plugins we anyway have, the supported ones, and then it just gets them from GitHub, shows them, and whenever we put more or remove some stuff, it automatically updates.
Yeah,
Would
that's
that be also the case?
that's something in the direction that would be good for us. It might not be the ideal case. Like there might be other good solutions, but we want this kind of automation to avoid us having to maintain a lot of code, because we're already maintaining a lot of code with Webpack Scaffold, and we might need to change the way we are generating boilerplate code with this kind of system. So in the future, like probably see something like Webpack Scaffold, but a way to detect how APIs for frameworks work, do code mods on them, and upgrade the version. If you get where I'm going.
Integration testing.
What was that? Integration?
You're talking about integration testing?
Probably not, but it's hard to explain. So I've shared this idea with the guy who made Babel, or he's maintaining Babel. It's not Sebastian. So to have some sort of library that would get the current library version, and then if that library updates and changes the API, then there is a mechanism for that to just upgrade the scaffolding tool. So we don't have to actually maintain the boilerplate itself.
Okay.
But that would be like that's a far out idea for now. But I would probably see something like that, so we can have still have like good defaults, but we don't have to maintain a lot of code.
Agreed.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't new to Webpack either. Like, there's other non-core Webpack efforts out there that are, I would say, as big as Webpack UI that are thriving in one capacity or another. So an example of that would be Styleable. That's a pretty big effort. I would compare in size to this, and they're not Webpack core either. So I just wanted to give a perspective that, you know, just because it's not necessarily something brought into Webpack core doesn't mean it's something we don't think is awesome, right?
This is just about minimizing the amount of stress we put out upon project maintenance, and you know, to be responsible for a lot of code is probably not a good idea.
No, I agree on that. I also think that also for reshop or future people, having too much hard-coded dependencies will not work. Like after a couple of months, we will be so outdated that, as Steven said, that you have to prioritize Webpack stuff versus the UI stuff, and at one point you say, okay, we just stop for now, and then it gets just a project which is unmaintained at one point if it's not generic enough.
It's just big enough to be its own thing, and honestly, if it were in the Webpack org, I think it would probably get not enough attention because there's so much competing in Webpack with it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, maybe. I mean, that's sort of going off the track, but the point being is that I don't think, you know, just getting it in GitHub, I think, is big enough. You know, and I don't think people will. I mean, I think people will thrive to it and contribute to it if they like it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sure. Like we will. I mean, that's the thing. Working on something and then sharing with the community, and then seeing also the feedback.
Yeah.
That's also, I think, why Evan also wants to also like also generate that in the future. We don't need to work also a lot on fixing stuff or adding stuff.
Right.
Great. So that was basically what I wanted to say about Webpack UI, and that's also for those who followed up on Google Summer Code. We think that it's like Webpack UI is probably like it's a good summer project, but it's just too big for a student to handle themselves.
Right. It's a big effort, and we want our students to succeed, right? And the biggest thing about that is, like, if I were a student, I think I would probably be a little bit bummed about being talked back for this, but I get it. Like, I don't want it would make it hard for everybody for a size that big,
Yeah, and I think we're just not ready yet with Webpack UI to hand it off to a student, because we have to plan it properly as well. So
Yeah.
there's not just one argument for us not prioritizing Webpack UI like this summer for Google Summer Code. It's just that there's a lot of factors that might play into this being wrong made, and in the effect of that, we will have a lot of work in afterhand to fix if we do this wrong.
Yes.
So I should work independently on this project now.
We still have plans for it, but we need to figure out what to do with it technically before we can actually implement it. And then we are going to move it or host it somewhere else than at the main CLI repository. So that might be in the, separately, or like if you host it yourself, then we might just say like, okay, the effort for this is going to be in your repository.
But what I think was I made that PR that I mentioned. So this basically prompt over TCP when on UI. So writing that outside the CLI repository is very hard. So basically I have to maintain child process and buffer and stuff to uh, get the question and answer type of stuff. So you can see now.
I think like for the bridging part on this would be for us to ask the user, such as just as a like regular Webpack package we have in the mono repository, to ask if the user wants to install it. And if the user install it, then we're going to install it. And that installation would be your repository. And after the user installs that, they would still be in the current running process. So you would still be in the context of the user without actually spawning a process yourself.
No, what I just want is that the code that I have posted on my PR, can this be on the web CLI repo so that I can easily make the UI stuff. So basically, I think that base is ready with that PR, so I can make that independently on my repo.
I haven't had a look at that pull request, but if it includes code that's specific for Webpack UI, probably it isn't going to be in the core repository. What we need right now in the core repository is just a way to generate Webpack configs, such as, I think it was either you or another guy who made it possible for us to skip prompting. So other than that, if you have the availability to generate Webpack configurations without actually prompting the user, then you would just need to run a scaffold yourself, which is this is something that you can do yourself without like involving Webpack itself in the use case you're expressing.
That basically kills the purpose of the scaffolding stuff, as the cautioning provides the flexibility with the user. So when we would skip all the prompts, that basically means default. We are using the defaults. So I think basically you can look now.
All right, I'll have a look when I have time. I'm working on exams, so I'm kind of busy. but I'll have a look once I have time. It's I'm sorry about that, but I have to prioritize school first.
Sure, I have also having exams, so I can understand.
Not
Okay,
me.
Yeah, kind of lucky.
Yeah, me neither. But other stuff is always there. No, I mean, if I get it right, it's basically about the reshape could continue and share with us, for example, the progress, and then we can also share with people regarding the effort. But I understand from the scope we have that there needs to be some more like technical discovery. I would call it like that, just to really understand.
I
I mean,
agree.
we have some nice UI designs now. We have also a base from reshape, but I do get like, I mean, I think like beginning of the year, we also said without having the clear user flow UIs, it's hard to really know what we need technically. Now that we have them, we could also really start saying, okay, this is how we want to slice it in a way like, okay, we just focus on this feature and see if people are happy with that. Because right now, even the
I
screens, they are
totally agree
awesome,
because on this
but
kind
they're
of
so
thing,
big, like you can, sorry, just
go
continue.
ahead. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, as I said, we need to come up with some slice which people can start working with and then iterate on that if there is a need. And Resharp already started, so supporting him, working on that. Why not? But I also get regarding Google Summer of Code. I don't know all the proposals. Yet I agree that this project is quite big for just a 3 month, or I don't know how long Google Summer of Code goes, like 3 month project phase. Might be a bit
Yes.
too big.
If this project was not in the proposal list, that would be a lot better. I would have applied on some other projects.
Come again? I didn't fully get that.
There is an idea list on the GSOC. So if the UI project was not there earlier, I would have applied for another project. I have 2 projects in my mind.
All right,
So
but that was just an ideas list, right? Because you could come up with your own ideas, and then we would evaluate it the same way. So that's just some bullet points on, like, here are some example projects. You don't need to necessarily pick that project.
but I was interested in UI project, and if that was not in the list as this was not going to be prioritized, so that will be a lot better. And when I was asking for a review on a project, if I would have informed about that earlier, would have been a lot better.
So what are we saying?
I don't know. I'm not into Google Summer of Code. I don't know that topic, to be honest.
So
Whoever
this
is in that
is
topic needs to
about,
make.
should we move that? Are we debating the Google Summer Code thing, or
It's kind of a bit now, yeah. Maybe we can do that on another, like, I don't know,
let's
whoever is
take that
involved in that.
offline.
Yeah. And just discuss it. Maybe Evan and Rishabh and maybe Druftrut. He's not here today, but I mean, he's also involved. And then
How do you say his name? You're the first one I heard say it correctly.
Druftrut?
True.
But I'm not
I
fully
really
sure. I
struggled.
think, yeah.
I think that's the best effort so far I've heard.
Well, thanks on that. Okay. So I will move on to the next thing, which would be, for me, is basically all the open pull requests.
I have an idea on the documentation about the migration.
Yeah.
And that's I think it will be great to have a task list of the things that are needed before moving the documentation to webpackjs.org.
Okay.
So, something like an issue, for example, like D1 made by Sean about the scaffolding. The issue I'm talking about is let's rework some of the main scaffolding layout, and where he made a list of all the things that were needed to do for the scaffolding layout. So I think it will be nice to have an issue with a task list of something that contributor can pick to give to help the migration of the documentation. I mean, I think even has some ideas on what it's needed before moving the documentation. So if you can write a list, I don't know, or even give some hints.
Yeah.
Regarding,
I can. Yeah.
Just go on, Evan. No.
Yeah. So my initial argument was that we're not in a stable point from the Webpack CLI project to actually start migrating the documentation. Yeah. And I still stand by that point, because soon we're going to have a new interface for Webpack CLI, which is going to remove a lot of arguments, and we have to rewrite the documentation anyway. So I think it would be the best, the best timing would be to wait for that efforts to be done, and then to migrate the documentation over there.
Yeah, and do you think that having a list of those kind of things that should be done before could be helpful?
I don't think it's worth the effort, really. It would just create noise.
Okay. That's enough for me.
Okay. So for me, the question is still like, I checked yesterday, but I didn't fully understand. Like, I don't know where to start regarding all these 18 pull requests. So there are many comments on some, but some not. And it would be great to know regarding all of these states. I don't know if some of you already work on some, maybe close some of them if they are not getting into the core anymore, or we should really check out.
I think that sorry to interrupt, but the first step would be to ask if the pull request is done. If it's not done, then ask what's left on the pull request, and then you can start actually looking at code.
Yeah. Okay. I will try to follow up on a couple of them. Start with the oldest ones, ping the people and see what it is, like how it is. And then one by one, I think they will just disappear as usual. Okay. Is there something else? So the plugin topic, docs, because we are having changes, is again more like on hold. Yeah. Anything else? Someone has questions.
Regarding the Google Summer of Code, I think I can open an issue to discuss about the output reporter, where I can write what I've understood since now and ask some feedback.
Yeah, do that. And after the bonding period, I think you should start implementing based on your proposal, because that was a good baseline.
So do you mean the one based on the event emitter?
You had in your proposal, you had examples, and you had the implementation details. So I would start on that and using your proof of concept to build upon.
Okay. And so the plugin suggested by Steven will be, I think, will be to make a plugin it should be a complete rework of the proposal.
All right, yeah. Regarding that, I think I agree with Steven. If it's a plugin, then probably it's more adaptable to users than having an extra flag. But it would still be like the only difference between this and having flags would be that your flags are now object properties, right, into the plugin.
Even
So
if
that's
you were
the
to build
difference.
it in the core, if you were to build it in the core, Soccer would tell you to make it a plugin anyway.
Okay. And yeah, okay.
I mean, one way of doing, even I know time is not enough. You could still, like, to understand the logic, you could still start the easy way, like your initial proposal, and then once you kind of know what to do, you can just move on to refactor that to a plugin,
Okay.
for example.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine too. But and the point I'm making is that in order to tap into Webpack at all, you have to write a plugin.
Yes.
Okay, then it's anyway clear. Plugin.
All right. And any other questions? Google Summer Code related or anything else? We can take those now.
I think not. Do we have more candidates regarding like CLI? Like, I know in the chat there were more like Google Summer of Codes people mentioned.
Oh,
Should I invite them, or are there more like for the?
This was specific to CLI, I think. We do have another proposal we're working on with another student with for Webpack Dev Server refactor, but that's adjacent from the separate.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't have anything. I'm more facilitating anyway. So if that's it, then I would say have a nice weekend.
You as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
See
Bye.
you. Bye bye.